Hey y'all, it's Maritime in America again, a podcast where we're charting America's offshore stories. It's the only podcast that highlights mariners' perspectives on issues facing the offshore community and the greater U.S. maritime community. I'm your host, Aaron Smith of the Offshore Marine Service Association. Each Friday, I'll bring you the Offshore Briefing, a quick rundown of the week's notable developments, updates, and news you need to know in the offshore space. In addition, we'll feature a special guest from the maritime world, bringing a mariner's voice and real-world perspectives straight to the show. Joining me are my co-hosts, Ashley and Angelle, where we'll strengthen the maritime American mariner's voice by diving into the people, policies, and powerful currents shaping the U.S. maritime community. Whether you're on deck or at your desk, we're glad you're here. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Maritime in America. It's great to have everyone back here. As always, I have my colleagues, Ashley and Angelle. Angelle, Ashley, welcome. How are y'all doing?
Just great.
Doing well today.
Good. So this is now our fifth podcast. We have survived through five podcasts, or four podcasts. This will be five. I think I'm feeling more, I'm not going to say I feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable, but I don't feel like I'm constantly screwing this up.
Ashley, we've just started this process.
There are so many more mistakes
Correct.
I will be able to make. Angelle, how are you feeling about it?
Well, I have my computer plugged in today, so I feel good. We're on a good start today.
Good. Yes,
But overall,
lessons
cameras look
learned.
good, sound looks good. Lessons learned.
Yeah.
And I've started to hear some feedback from some folks on our first episode with Captain Rick. I actually heard from a gentleman who worked with him and has worked with him for years. And he said, I didn't know some of those stories about Rick. I didn't know that background. I really found it fascinating, and I'm more impressed with him now, which, I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do here. So I really like that. Anyone else gotten any feedback?
Yeah, actually, at our happy hour in Virginia Beach, when that episode dropped, people were talking about it, and even like seasoned maritime people learned some things from it. So I thought it was cool. One of my besties over at Chevron sent me an email saying that he's been enjoying listening to it. So it's just great that everyone has. And I would say my lessons learned this far into it is that the angle is everything. The first episode was not a great angle on me, for those that were watching.
You were
Also,
fine.
don't ever book a podcast a few days after coming home from shepherding spring break with eighth graders, because it was rough, and I looked rough, and it sounded rough. So I apologize.
Fair point.
So those are my biggest lessons learned.
Good call. Angelle, anything, have you gotten any feedback?
No feedback on my end, but I did listen, and I do think that it was a good first podcast, overall, to say it's everyone's first one. So congratulations to everyone.
And I will also say this, is that, like I said, with the gentleman who had worked with Captain Rick, that he said he didn't know some of that background and some of those stories. That's what we're doing here, is we are too few people understand about our industry. And by and large part, that is our own fault. Outside of like Rise of the Cajun Mariner, we have not done a good job of telling the country about what great opportunities exist in this industry. And so, like I said in the first episode, that's what this was designed to be, was to be telling people about the great opportunities and about the great stories that are found in our industry here. So I think that is, that feedback is kind of showing that we're hitting the mark. And, today is another great example of that. We have two great guests, our first time having two guests here. And they have a really amazing story, and I'm very excited about telling it. And I'll say, first, when I transitioned from working for the government, unfortunately, to working in the industry, actually, one of the first people I met was John Fontenot. And so it is, and I've always enjoyed his story. And if you haven't had a chance to see his YouTube episode, it's a great episode, and he's got a great background. So I'm really excited. And we also have with us Cooper Fontenot as well. So I want to welcome you, gentlemen. And this is my first time meeting Cooper, and I'm very excited to do so. But really excited to welcome our guests. So John and Cooper, welcome and hello.
Hello, glad to be here. Happy to be a part of this groundbreaking podcast that you guys have started putting together. So listen to the first episode; it was great, and it's really an honor to be a part of it. It really is.
Yes, I'm very excited for this. Thank you for that introduction, and I'm just very excited to get on here, share some stories, share some of my experiences, and be a part of this.
That's great. That's great.
Aaron, excuse me, let me interrupt. You also forgot to point out that John was smart enough to marry an Ashley as well.
Yes, yes. We both have
Smart man.
survived marrying Ashley's. It is you can always look up ratings on names, and it rates
Yeah.
highly in
All the
certain
time.
aspects.
Every
One of
time.
the first names on the list starts with an A.
Mm-hmm.
And Angelle, I think actually probably John was probably the first person in the industry that you met, wasn't he?
Yeah, so John actually interviewed me for my
Yeah.
second interview. And I think that he did a very good job because, I mean, I'm here.
That means you did a good job. Yes.
But
He's
yeah,
very smart.
overall, I feel like the second interview with John kind of gave me a little insight of what to expect in the industry.
Well, that is cool. And, so John, I kind of teased it. But for those who haven't seen the video you filmed on Offshore America, give us your background here and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, sure. I'll just kind of summarize. We have a whole hour, so I'm sure later on I'll go a little deeper on some of the stories. But the gist of it is, graduated high school in 1989. Didn't have a whole lot of ambition as far as where I'm going to go career wise. I was just, didn't know what I wanted to do. College was not an option for me. I was not a scholarship material and couldn't really afford college. So, work was the best next step for me. And I ended up joining an offshore supply boat company. And back then it was a temporary Z card you would get, which turned into a permanent Z card. So I got my Z card, went to work offshore, and spent 7 years, a little over 7 years offshore before deciding that I kind of wanted to expand my horizon and see what I could do within the industry, shoreside. Made my way into the office for the company that I was with, and kind of worked my way through there as well, and have been here ever since. And that was January of 1990 when I first stepped foot on a boat, and here we are, spring of 25. And so it's easy for me to remember how long I've been in the industry because I started the first month of the first year of a decade. So I'm in my 35th year now, and happy to be a part of it. I take a lot of what I use on boats and apply it to my work every day. Always try to remember it's a different industry than it was back then, but there's still a lot of similarities. And so I try to make sure that remains a part of my everyday work life here now as the vice president of Odyssey Marine.
Well, and that's just great. And I think that, like I said, that story just typifies what this industry is and what this industry can provide. And that's just so great. So Cooper, you're kind of following in your dad's footsteps, sort of. Why don't you take our listeners and our viewers through your background and how you got into this industry?
Of course. So I graduated high school in 2023, and I decided to go to school in Lafayette for a year in person. And after doing a year in person, I decided I wanted to do some work. So I decided for the summer I would go follow my dad's footsteps and go offshore and work on an offshore supply vessel. So I worked that summer and decided, and actually while I was working during the summer, I was taking a few online summer courses as well. And I decided, hey, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I think it's it's very beneficial for me. So let me see if I could continue to take these online courses and continue to work offshore. So I did some research and I talked to a few people and I figured out I was able to indeed do the online courses so I could still pursue a degree while working offshore. So since then, I'm actually coming up in 9 days. I think it will be a year since I started working offshore, and I'm loving
Wow.
every minute of it.
That is really cool. And what position do you have now on the boat? You're AB. Well, that's cool. And are you pursuing any sort of license upgrade? Are you trying to work up hoss pipe?
So my plan is to, as long as I'm offshore and continue to work, I want to be progressing my licenses as far as I can. It is still, I mean, I've been working for a year, so I just have probably around 250 days of sea time under my belt. So it's still a little ways to go to get progress to get the sea time for other licenses. But that is my plan to continue to progress.
So you're going through with your degree as well as pursuing all your licensing all at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, I wish I was as mature as you.
And what degree are you going for?
So I am looking to go for a finance degree, and actually, I'd like to go to grad school for a finance degree as well. And there are some good online grad school programs that I've been looking into. So I'm excited, which will allow me to stay working offshore for an extended period of time while I get that degree.
So this is just so cool. And sorry to harp on this, but so do you take actual online classes when you're on the boat, or do you do it when you're on your off time?
I
So
mean,
yes, sir, I do it all the time when I'm home and whenever I'm on the boat. We're fortunate enough to live in an age where we have Wi-Fi
mhm.
on the boat. We're pretty much connected all over the world. So I'm able to stay up with my studies and my work on my off periods at home and in my off watch periods on the boat.
Amazing.
The
That is
condition
good.
always told me you
And
can keep working as long as your grades don't suffer. Because I'm
Yep.
still a dad, but also, I guess ultimately, I guess I'm his boss too. You put your best foot forward while you're on that boat at all times because you're representing yourself and you're representing me, and so it's a balance because you have to be able to work your 12-hour watch and do it to the best of your ability, and sometimes 12 hours turns into 14, just depending on the situation. But also want to make sure that his grades don't suffer because ultimately he doesn't have to work right now. He most kids go to college and he could go work at a grocery store or a fast food restaurant, that'll work with his school schedule. But the fact that he's able to do both, I just want to make sure he can balance both. Do the best he can from the work
Uh-oh.
aspect, do the best he can from the school aspect. And so far, he's knocking it out of the park.
that is great to hear there. And maybe this is for John and for Cooper. Because one of the things that we really focus on the Instagram and on our YouTube channel and our other socials is really showing the personal stories, and just because I'm a big boat nerd, the boat stories as well. Can you say what vessel you're working on, Cooper? Or John, do you mind if he says what vessel you're working on?
Sure.
All right.
For Cooper or for me
So
to tell you?
currently I'm working on the So currently, I'm working on the Odyssey Phoenix, but I've actually worked on five boats, I believe, so far. So if you'd like to hear those as well, that
Yeah,
we
that
can
would
go.
be cool.
So I actually started off on 100 tons on the Odyssey Defender. I spent some time over there just kind of getting my feet wet. Then I moved over to 300-foot uh, Odyssey Phoenix. Spent some time there for my first hitch. Got off of the Phoenix for 2 weeks and then went back to work on the Odyssey Squire, which is, I believe, a 265-foot vessel. Spent two hitches on the Squire, went back to the Phoenix, spent a few hitches on the Phoenix, and then I went to the Odyssey Baron, which is a 245-foot vessel. Spent inch and a half there, actually. Enjoyed that time. Went took my 2 weeks off, went back to Phoenix, worked on the Phoenix for a few hitches, and they pulled me off to go to um, the Odyssey Spirit and go work in the shipyard for the Odyssey Spirit, get it ready for the Coast Guard inspection. So worked in the Spirit, took it all the way through Coast Guard, and then I was moved from the Odyssey Spirit back to the Odyssey Baron for a few weeks. Took some time, took my 2 weeks off, and then I've been back on the Phoenix ever since. I think I really have enjoyed being on all these different boats and learning all these different boats. It's been I'm working as an A-Wing deckhand, but I am going down into the engine room and learning some of these boats, helping out with some of the engineers and Q-meds. I am learning the ins and outs. I'm up in the wheelhouse whilst we're underway, helping some of the captains, taking a spin at the wheel. So my main goal right now is to learn as much as I can and just see the whole operation, how it works, whether that's from cleaning the boat and rigging cargo to seeing how the captains are able to handle the vessel or to seeing how the engineers are making the vessel run. So I'm enjoying it a lot, and I just think I'm getting some great experience.
Well, that is cool. And Ashley can tell us
So cool.
what a QMed is, right, Ashley?
Just like a Christmas tree. I learned what
Yes,
a Christmas
Ashley
tree
learned
was last episode.
QMed is
it.
qualified member of the engine department. QMed.
Great. I thought it
Yep.
was something to do with like the
Medical.
doctor there.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Most people do.
That's when I was like, oh, are you going to become a doctor as well, Cooper?
Why not?
might
He's
as
doing
well.
everything
I
else.
know.
And actually, that is interesting because I think Angelle, actually, one of the first OSVs you've ever been on was the Odyssey Phoenix.
Yes,
So,
that's correct.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah,
yep.
it was.
We went down and talked to the captain there, and I think actually both the captain and the relief were on at the time. So I think you probably know both of the captains that Cooper works under. So. So, and John and Cooper, answer this. Do you think that is a normal career path that you do have where you, especially early in your career, you get to experience different vessels and different operational, because, each boat is kind of doing the same thing or is not doing the same thing. They look the same, but they can do a variety of roles. So they're doing different things. Do you think that is a normal career where you're getting a taste of a bunch of different jobs on different boats?
100%, absolutely. If you run a sea time report on every one of our guys, you're not going to have one or just two boats listed on that sea time report. Part of the industry is there's a manning requirement, as you well know, in the certificate of inspection. You have to have so many men on a boat at minimum. Then based on the project or the charter, the customer will ask for additional men. Maybe we need more riggers or added DPOs, whatever the case may be. So because of that, it's not like a bunch of grocery stores on land where you're assigned to this store and you only work this store. Our stores float and they have different needs at different times. So a lot of times a boat will leave one charter, go on to another charter, and then we'll have an entirely different manning requirement. So we got to go grab other people and assign them to that project. And there's a lot of times when your normal work rotation might be 28 and 14, but I want to work over this hitch. I don't want to go home for my 14 days. But if you're on a boat with a regular rotation, you can't stay on that boat because someone's already coming to relieve you. So we'll send you over to another boat for 2 weeks and then come back. So whether it's a need or it's a request from the mariner, that it is very common to see a lot of different boats. And I think it's great because especially if you're young in your career, it gives you a lot of exposure, understand the various size vessels. Some vessels are DP2s, some vessels are DP1s, some vessels are Z-drive propulsion versus conventional drive propulsion. So there's a lot of different things, diesel electric versus, regular main engine.
So, John, it sounds like Cooper then is working his way up the hose pipe while working also his way up the academic hose pipe, if you will, by going undergrad and then grad school as a plan. You had a very similar progression as well, where you started on deck, and then talk about your progression, where you progressed while you were at sea.
So while offshore, yes, I got my ordinary seaman, my Z card at the time, and then the good thing about the Coast Guard, it's very structured on how to climb the ladder. Yeah, so walking onto the back deck of a boat for the first time, there's a whole new world out there that you really didn't know, and I certainly didn't know. But one of the first things that was explained to me was that the Coast Guard is structured very well in the fact that you get this amount of sea time, you're now eligible to climb the next ladder rung. Then another set of sea time will get you to the next ladder rung, and so forth. So my goal, it's easy to get the sea time, you just got to go to work, but you also have to be able to study, learn, absorb, and then pass a test to go from OS to AB, which is able-bodied seaman, which I did. And got my AB almost immediately. Right at 6 months, I was able to get that. And then from there, it's just a matter of time. It's a longer gap, a much bigger gap when it comes to getting your license, your deck officer license. But I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do or not. I was just kind of, again, I didn't have at 18, 19 years old, I just didn't have that vision that I'm proud to say Cooper has. And I see a lot of folks at his age right now they can look ahead and see what they want. I just knew when I would get off the boat, my date that I got off the boat, and all the fun things I was going to do when I got off. And then how much money I could spend before I came back 2 weeks later. But over time, you slowly grow and you slowly mature and you start realizing, man, there's more to it than this. I want to go get my license. I do want to go get it. So I started going to school, started studying, and it was man, so much to learn. There's just so much to learn about this deck general. There's safety. There's now you have to learn how to navigate. You need to learn how to plot. You need to use things that you don't usually use in the Gulf of Mexico: set and drift, your current, your tidal tables. But fortunately for me, I spent 2 years as an AB working in Alaska in Cook Inlet, where we had a 25-foot differential in the tides every 12 hours. So there was huge. I started learning from the captain and the mate on the boat, teaching me how to understand what the tides do, how to set for current and drift, and how to plot courses. And I was always very attentive. I did my job. I knew what I needed to do: chipping, painting, cleaning, whatever it is, cosmetics. And then from that point on, it was a matter of just go and get the license testing. Did I lose again?
So I love that history, John, and I love how that's working. And actually, we're working with another person and hope to have her on the podcast soon. And she's been, I know, posting a lot online about all the courses that she's having to pass for her mate's license, and it is intense. But I think what is really interesting here, and another point that I don't think people understand, and I want to get both of y'all's take on this, is that I believe there's a heavy perception that if you choose to go to sea, that's your career forever. And I don't think that is.
Do you mean that you
obviously
can't
not
ever get off the boat? You can't come back in the office? Is that the
Yeah.
vision? Yeah, I agree with Aaron. That's the
And I
goal.
think personally, I even think about that. And that's obviously not true. So, Cooper, what's your 5-year plan or 10-year plan here?
Okay, so I think 5 years from now, there's a chance I'll still be on the boat. But in 10 years, I believe once I have my degree, once I have hopefully my master's, and just a large oversight of the industry and just a visual of what truly goes into working it offshore, I think eventually I would like to get into the finance sector of some maritime company. I'd be able to have the experience and I would be able to see how the hands-on boat offshore side of it runs, able to use that experience, able to use that information to go and help a company run their operations better. And as I said, I am my finance side of it in the finance sector. I'd be able to not only help that company run better, hopefully help that company save money or make more money, and just overall give back to the industry. Because first, I believe that it has given me the opportunity to do something that's pretty unique, give me the opportunity to, I'd say, as a 20-year-old, I am in a different aspect of life than most other 20-year-olds, and I think it's opened my eyes a little bit. So I believe that 10 years, if I'm able to be using my experience and knowledge of boats and experience and knowledge from my academics to be helping the industry and to be growing in the industry, I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That is, yes. And
And
John,
be your dad's boss, because he'll just end up working for you.
Bring it.
well, and John, I know that one of your responsibilities is you are in charge of hiring the mariners at Odyssey. So do you find that as well? Do you find that career path is typical, atypical? Do you think that the industry working at sea has given a good springboard to you to go shoreside?
So, first part of that question, it's atypical for folks to come out here and springboard shoreside. It's just the majority of folks come out here because they don't want to have the traditional 9 to 5 jobs. They love what they do out here. They will come out here to work, to have the freedom to do what they want on their days off. So I think the attraction here is the remoteness and the schedule. But that's not to say that it shouldn't be attractive. And there are plenty of folks. Funny story. I just received an email from a financial advisor just doing a little bit of soliciting, asking if we have a 401k manager would like to sit down and have a talk. He used to be one of our DPOs 5 years ago. So he did the same thing. He was going to school. He was an academy graduate and then worked offshore. And then he worked his way into a financial advisory role. And so it is, although not common, it is something that should be on the table as far as an option if you want to come to work offshore and then go and do something shoreside. It typically helps if you stay within the industry because you know a lot of the field. For me, that was the help that I think helped me to advance my career shoreside. After I got my license, I got a 1,600-ton license and really enjoyed it. Did a good job of learned how to handle the boat really, really well and managing the people and managing the customer. And there's so many things to do, the paperwork. But it gave me a broader scope of really what's going on within. It's not just this boat, it's a company. And it's not just this company, it's an industry. And I wanted to do more, which is why I kind of jockeyed my way into the office for the company I was with at the time. And part of what I did was I was only living a few miles away from my work. So on my days off, I would go to the office and I would say, y'all need any help around here? You need me to drive? I can hot shot run for y'all. I can go become first aid CPR certified and I can train the guys offshore because I noticed a lot of the guys need to recertify their training that I'm working with. And that's what they did. And on my days off, I would drive for them and I would train CPR and I would do some safety training and that customer required stuff.
We're just going to build a library of terms that Ashley's going to describe here. And
So have you noticed I've been writing things down? Legit.
Well, and I think hot shotting will be the next one. That's a one and done run, either in a van or on a boat.
Right.
Hot shot is a one.
That also
and done
is something bad in the other world.
Thank you. Well, and one, I think for our listeners, because I know we talked a lot about this the first episode, and I don't know if we've necessarily covered it, and we might need to explain, as we talked about it, we need to explain to Tracy
Yes.
what a 1,600-ton license is, because I think that's interesting, and I don't think a lot of people understand this. So, Cooper and John, why don't you all talk about the tonnage of licenses and what you can have and why there's that that bifurcation and differences between the licensed tonnages?
So boats are built based on when the boats are built, Coast Guard rates it based on the tonnage of the vessel. And it's not how much they actually weigh. You would think that that's what it would be. But it has a lot to do with the dead weight tonnage, how much can it carry, the size of the boat, are there any tonnage openings? There's a lot of different things. But for the sake of just being simple, every boat has a tonnage. And then there are different levels of tonnage that require different levels of licensing. So anything under 100 tons would require a license of at least 100 tons. And that's its own test and its own set of requirements. Then you have a 200 ton. Same thing. If the boat is in between 100 and 199 tons, you would need a 200 ton license, own test, own set of requirements. Same concept. You have the 500 ton, 1600 ton. That's domestic. When you go to the international tonnage, it's 3,000, which we call ITC, which is International Tonnage Code. And then it goes to the 6,000, the 10,000, and then the unlimited. So it's very confusing, and you almost have to really have a degree in Coast Guard lingo and regulations to be able to understand all this. But when you live in it, like Cooper understands it, Cooper's been living it a year, and he understands what the progression is. Right, Coop?
Yes,
Well,
sir.
then I would say, Cooper, then tell us, because I think that's a very good description. So you've talked about, you're working on the Phoenix. It's a big boat. But you also talked about you've worked on the Squire. I think you said the Count in there. Those are some smaller boats, and I think some of those are 100-ton, if memory serves. What is the difference when you're working on the boat? Is there a difference in what they're doing? Is there a difference in how your day is? Is there a difference in the ride?
So yeah, I'd say that for the most part, whenever we have a job and are under contract for a customer, it's what I do is fairly similar between the small 100-ton boats to the larger Phoenix, but which is rigging cargo from the dock, rigging the cargo onto the boat, chaining the boat down, chaining the cargo down onto the boat, taking the cargo all the way to the rig or the drill ship or whatever location we're at, and then sending off that cargo, hooking the crane to the cargo, and sending that off to the rig. So I think the rigging for the most part similar, but the main difference for me is the interior, right? So cleaning the boat or maintaining the sanitary duties or the living quarters, whether you have your own stateroom or not. Like on the larger boats, you could have your own stateroom. But obviously, for the smaller boats, so less rooms, you sometimes have to bunk with people. And then, of course, the actual propulsion systems and the how the boat operates once it's under the crane, whether it's the DP1 or DP2 system. And
Oh, Ashley loves talking about dynamic positioning.
so
My
I'll let my
God.
dad correct me if I'm wrong,
Or
but I
not.
believe the difference between the dynamic positioning is the can't think of the term, but basically there's different decks. There's two, or for DP2,
You're looking for the
there are
term
two.
redundancy, I bet.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. There's two
I was about to
different
say, don't worry,
redundancies.
one of these nerds can help you.
I believe for DP2 there's two
Angelle, don't
redundancies.
laugh at that. You're being included in the nerds column here.
No. I said two. I meant the other two. Angelle, I should have said
Oh,
three.
her
All
too,
three
yeah.
of y'all.
I actually knew that one though.
There's the redundancy difference, which allows for a DP2 system, it allows if one set of one redundancy
It's one anything.
fails,
Failure,
Any
if
part
there's
of
a
it
failure,
fails, there's a backup.
correct. That's
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Cooper, you're kind of nerding out too. Am I the only last hope here?
It comes
Jump,
with it.
jump on board, Ashley. Come on, there's
Oh.
room.
yeah.
Yep. So,
But for me, I think I've always throughout this year now that I've been working, I've been trying to learn as much as I possibly can. I think it truly is interesting to me, so it's easy for me to pick up on stuff that I'm interested in.
And I think And I think you gloss over really how cool a thing this is. That, you are in the middle of the ocean. You're on the back deck of a vessel, and there's a box, or there's some pipe or something like that, and you are under a steel structure, and you are going to attach a chain to that item, and then the crane on that structure is going to lift it up in the middle of the ocean. I don't think
As the
people
boat's rocking.
Right.
as it's rocking, as the
Yeah.
rig can be moving as well.
Right.
So I actually I'd say maybe a few days every few weeks while I'm out there, I can think, man, this is pretty darn cool. This
Yeah.
is truly not something that a lot of people are doing or know, and especially not at my age. And I think it's pretty cool. And I think that's another reason why I want to continue to progress in my licenses, because I think it would be the coolest thing ever to be a captain and be able to operate a vessel and have command over a vessel. I think that would be incredible.
One of the first times that after I got my license and I was able to actually drive the boat. And here's a term you might not know, Ashley, but when you walk a boat into the dock, most boats you think go forward or backwards, mainly forward. But to get dockside, you have to walk that boat sideways in. And this was before Z drive boats. This is conventional drive. And it takes a lot to be able to make the boat just start walking over and then get to the dock. And the first time I did it, my first thought was, I sure wish my mom and dad could see me do this.
Yeah.
But
that's so cool.
I knew they never could, because they'll never be standing on the dock watching me dock this boat,
Yeah.
this 200-foot supply boat. Well, the cool thing is that maybe Cooper's going to be able to walk that boat up against the dock one day, and maybe I'll be right there watching him, but I'll know that
Yeah.
exactly what he's doing. So I think that's going to be cool.
That is-
Super cool.
that is
Meanwhile,
really
I
cool.
can't park my car in reverse. Like, I have to put my head out the window and everything. Hey, but because I've meant to ask this earlier and I didn't, but we get calls all the time at AMSA, like probably 4 or 5 a day, of people calling and saying, I want to work offshore. What do I do? Who's hiring? Where do I go? How do I start? And honestly, a lot of the time I'm swamped with something, or like I just don't, and I don't even know what to say. Like, I know there's interest out there, right? And I don't even know where to direct people. Or they're like, who's hiring? I'm like, I don't know which companies are hiring, or what would you say is the best way to direct people on how to get more knowledge about how to get in the industry?
That's a great question, because I even have friends asking me, like, how do you
Yeah, it's
apply
so
for
vague.
something like this? So, Dad, what you think about that one?
So the thing to do is if they ask somebody, asking you, Ashley, would be a little bit different than asking Cooper, because Cooper's actually doing the job. The biggest thing is you just have to know who the boat companies are. So from an AMSA perspective, well, I don't know who's hiring, but here are the companies.
And
then
that's
you
what
just,
I do,
And
yeah.
you just go online and you search for the companies. But to me, the biggest thing is it's different than going to work on a drilling rig, or going to work on a production platform, or even going to work as a service provider that goes in and out to these, whether it's a mud job or paint crew that goes in and out to these offshore facilities. Working on boats is a very unique industry. And I've always, since the days that I started hiring people, always pose, there's 3 main points you have to be able to live with yourself to be able to work on a boat. The first one is being away from home for extended periods of time.
Check.
You need to be able to be away from home. You need to be able to FOMO, you can't have fear of missing out, because Christmas parties, Mardi Gras, all of that, when you're offshore, you're offshore. You're assigned to your boat. The second thing is, if you have family at home, they also have to be able to adapt to that. Because when the washing machine breaks, you can't come in to fix the washing machine. Mama's got to take care of that, because you're assigned to the vessel. So it's a two-sided thing.
Now you're at Ashley. We can't do these
Ashley
things.
can't
without
fix the washing machine.
No, they
No,
can't live
no, no.
without
We
me.
just
Oh.
need her at the house. We
So
cannot live
Ashley
without
can't
her.
go work offshore.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I was like,
So-
I could do this. They can't.
The crippling seasickness also works
True.
against her, but
That's number 3.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
third thing. Seasickness.
I
You're
already-
living
yeah.
on a moving structure. So a lot of times people can say, "Oh, I can do that. I used to drive trucks. I could be away for a long time." Or I
No.
did this. Oh yeah, she knows what to do. You might not know if you get seasick or not. So that third factor comes into play, and it's really something that if you can manage those 3, the rest you can deal with. Those are in my experience over the years, those are the 3 biggest points why people cannot work offshore.
No, you're right. Those are 3 huge points, and I fail all 3 of them. So I can never work offshore.
Is there a way to find out if you're seasick without going on the boat?
Yes, you can go to a simulator and you can just sit there like I did, and 5 minutes later vomit.
So a simulator is one thing, but they're really, to answer your question, Angelle, the answer is really no. Because if a guy from Iowa drives all the way down to Louisiana, he's not going to drive all the way down here, and he's knocking on doors trying to get a job. Unless you've been on the water, and a lake doesn't count.
Nope.
Unless you've been on a body of water where there's the sea state, there's really no way to know. It's a roll of the dice. I will say people who get seasick don't always stay seasick. Once your body adapts, it's an equilibrium thing, and there's Dramamine, there's things you can do and take. But a lot of times they'll adapt to it and they'll grow into it and they won't get seasick anymore. But sometimes some people get violently seasick and they will not step foot on a boat again.
I get car sick. I don't get air sick. I definitely get car sick. But
Cooper.
that could be Aaron's driving.
yeah,
Cooper, what's your mama's name?
Yeah, actually.
Ashley, does she get car sick?
Car sick and seasick.
Does she get seasick? Yeah, it must be an Ashley
Absolutely.
thing. What's going on here?
Yeah.
it is.
I was about to say, would the Gulf of Mexico, snorkeling in the Gulf of Mexico, and I got seasick in the water. Like literally, we were, and I got seasick.
Person I've ever seen.
I mean, I was in the water, and he was yelling at me like, "Who gets seasick in the water, Ashley?"
Yeah, there we go. No, but I think that is important. But and John, like you say, the rest is just noise. And I will say that this industry, and additionally, our regulators in the Coast Guard we make it way too difficult to get good people into this industry. And one thing, and I know that you've worked on this, and I've been working on this as well, is let's make it easier to get people into the industry, because this can
And keep.
provide,
Mm-hmm.
and
More
keep-
importantly,
it can provide such a good livelihood and such a good career path. But, if it's like, hey, I got to wait for a piece of paper to come back from West Virginia for a month, or I can go, build houses tomorrow. So many people are going to build houses tomorrow.
And not even
no
that.
offense.
Not even waiting for that piece of paper is, gosh, I hope I got everything right to send off to wait for that month-long piece of paper. And if I miss one thing, it comes back to me and I start all over again. The clock starts ticking again.
To add to that, like, I don't believe that without my dad knowing and having done this, it's a much more difficult process to even get my AB or even get the certification that I have now, let alone the certifications in the future. And it is helpful to have other crew members that have done it, but I really think like even getting started is extremely difficult without my dad. So I think there definitely should be some way to streamline this and just make everything less complicated and just communicate. I think communication is a big, because I feel like the Coast Guard, one, they don't communicate very often with you, and two, I've heard stories of just hearing different things, just contradictory, and you need one thing, or you don't need this, or you should have had this, but I was told I didn't need it. Yeah, I think communication is a big part of it.
And it might be that John and I might be the only people old enough on this call to remember this, but there used to be these things called your choose your own adventure books, and it would be you'd read something, and then it was
Yes.
like, if do you want to go into the cave, switch to page 40, or if you go up the stairs, you go to page 27. Coast Guard licensing is the worst choose your own adventure novel
Yes.
ever. Every path goes to every other path, but is also a dead end. And people spend way too much time, way too much courses taking the wrong course when they should have taken this course instead of advanced firefighting at this point in their career. And, we need to get rid of that. And, I think, John, one of the positions that you hold in addition to your day job, and you hold a ton of positions in addition to your day job, is your history on MERPAC.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about why you joined MERPAC and what that is and the work you're doing on MERPAC to help this problem.
So MERPAC is a federal advisory committee that's put together by, it's actually the president's office that allows groups of people from within an industry to discuss the ins and outs of that industry. And we are part of the industry, and we help to recommend easier paths to move along throughout that industry. So I serve on the MERPAC committee, which stands for Merchant Personnel Advisory Committee. So the Merchant Marine Personnel Advisory Committee, or MERPAC. I've been serving on it probably about 10 years now. And we're presented with task statements on issues that's going on within the Coast Guard. And our job as MERPAC members is to sit down, weigh it all out, and let's try to find a path for the purpose of benefiting the mariner. That's our sole purpose. Not to make new training regulations for the benefit of a training company, not to make something to where it benefits the vessel operator. It's 100% intended to make life easier for the merchant mariner. And, we've worked on a lot of great things, and we've made a lot of great recommendations. The Coast Guard doesn't always take our recommendations, but there's a lot of things that go into it that I feel like if I wouldn't have been on this committee, that it might have hampered our industry more than helped our industry. Because imagine that this is federal. This is for the whole United States of America and every maritime aspect or segment of the industry. So there's East Coast, there's West Coast, there's Great Lakes, inland waterways. I'm representing shipping companies in the Gulf of Mexico oil and gas industry, and we are kind of looked at almost like stepchildren sometimes. And I want to make sure that we become part of the family. So a lot of the industry a lot of the regulations that are built didn't always have our best interest in mind. So through MERPAC, I was able to bring our best interest into play.
And I think that is really cool that, again, you have someone that, started on the deck as a deckhand that is now advising the Coast Guard on the regulations that should have. And, I know that the MERPAC meetings often have, one of the assistant commandants that attends, so you're providing input directly in. And I would say, look, I'm not always the one to give Coast Guard credit, but I would say they use their advisory committees, I think, better than any other federal agency. And I think that is very important. And John, another one of the jobs you have that is in addition to your day job is you helped found the Offshore Service Vessel Dynamic Positioning Authority.
Yes.
Worst name ever. Did you help
Worst
pick
name
that
ever.
name out?
Yeah. I hear you joined the day after they invented the name, so we won't blame you for that. But talk about why you helped form the OSVDPA and where if that career you had while at sea helped justify why you spend time on the OSVDPA.
So real quick, my days on the boat, I was scratching my head a lot on why things were going, why we were regulated the way we were regulated, why even the company I worked for made the decisions that they were making. while I was on the boat. So when I came shoreside, I always kept that perspective in mind. And my goal was to always, let's give clarity to these guys. And maybe I didn't understand the big picture, which is why I was scratching my head. So maybe I'm going to communicate better now that I'm here on this side of the wall. But also, I felt like some of the stuff was just happening. We were as an industry allowing things to happen because it was status quo. So one of the biggest issues we had when dynamic positioning started growing within our industry is we really basically had one dynamic positioning authority. And it just happened to be international. It was overseas, 7-hour time difference. And the regulations were based on vessels operating more so in that part of the world, not our part of the world. So I felt like whenever we got together as an industry and started discussing the possibility of creating an authority here in the Gulf area, it was a great idea, because who better than to set up a set of regulations and get these guys where they need to be from a DP standpoint, educating, certification, training, the knowledge base, than a group of operators coming together, and they own the vessels. We operate it, we own them, and we know what they're made of. We know what a DP system is, and we know what these boats do, and we know what our guys do. So the OSVDPA was an easy decision to join, because it was intended to, again, help the mariner. There was a lot of roadblocks when going with the other place. A lot of roadblocks, still are, and they were unnecessary. They didn't have to happen. So our goal was to remove the roadblocks and not make shortcuts. The path is still the same. Let's just get the roadblocks out the way.
It makes sense to keep it in like in the States. It's
Yes.
an American. That was when OSVDPA was formed, that was a no-brainer for me.
Yep,
Is why are we
yep.
letting a foreign, coming in telling us what to do here in our water?
Yep,
I
exactly.
think that's a good point. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in my career is starting that as well. And because of those things you're saying, when you can, provide someone that have so many roadblocks, that wasn't able to get this piece of paper that prevents them from furthering their career. And you're able to say, no, look, you've met all the requirements. You just don't have the boxes checked like some people would like to see them checked. But everything is here that you need to have. Makes total sense. And so I've always really appreciated your viewpoint on that. And, John, when you've talked about, MERPAC and OSVDPA and, just your day job and working and hiring there at Odyssey, it seems like mentoring really and helping out the people who come after you really seems to be a touchstone for you. Can you talk about where that comes from? And if you find that to be a maritime type quality, or is that something that's personal to you?
It's a little bit of both. I can tell you that I get that part of me from my mom. That's how she raised us. But I will also say that because of that, I've developed it when you're living on a boat and it's you and your new family. This is your new family. You don't know a soul the first day you walk on a boat, but this is your family. This is the family who's going to have your back when work needs to be done, when there's an emergency situation. This person that you don't know might be saving your life. You don't know that. So this is your new family. So you get to know them. And these are probably people that I wouldn't have associated with if I wouldn't be working with them on a boat. And you learn to love them. You learn to, this is some great people in your life. And to this day, I still, from the early 90s when I was working on a boat, I still stay in touch with some guys that I've worked with in the past. And that's just the bond that you create. So when you have that, you want to help them as much as you can. And then over my 7.5 or so years working on boats, when I came shoreside, I made a mental vow to myself. I want to keep on helping these guys because these are my roots. This is where I came from. This is where I started, and I'll never, ever forget that. I can put myself in there, and if they give me a call right now, I can imagine exactly what they're telling me, and I can see the story playing out in real life because I did it. the scene's a little different, the environment's a little bit different. For the most part, I've done it, and if I can help them in any step of the way, I will definitely continue to do that. So from an OSVDPA standpoint, yes, that's easy. From a MERPAC standpoint, yes, that's easy, because I imagine if is that me still out there, I would want someone to help me.
Well, that's cool. And Cooper, you're living that right now. Do you
Right.
feel that on board? Do you feel that kind of familial atmosphere on board?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree that I believe the boat crew's your family. I mean, you're living with them at a month at a time, sometimes more, and you're having to interact with them. You got to get along with your coworkers, but you're cooking together, you're eating meals together, you're laughing together, talking, having conversations. 100% feel like that's my family, and feel like I would want the best for each and every person on my vessel, and I would hope that they want the same for me.
That is cool. Um, well, and I think we're kind of running to the end here. And Cooper, I know you're extremely busy. I think Ashley
Gosh.
less so. But
I have
but I wanted to get some takeaways, and I think I'd maybe start um, with Angelle here. We'll go alphabetically between y'all, and go Angelle. What are some of the takeaways you have gained from today?
Well, I think that it's an interesting story that, John, you said it was 1989 that you started
I
in
graduated
the
high
industry?
school in '89. January of '90, I stepped foot on a boat for the first time.
Okay. So in 1990, you stepped on the boat and wasn't really sure of what was next. And now fast forward to today, you are so heavily involved in the industry. And not only that, but your son is also in the industry, and he has a more fleshed out um, version of his future because of your your doings. So I think that's like very interesting, and like from a past perspective, and then fast forwarding to today and seeing in the future, I think it's just like a very interesting story of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, and now I'm pretty much succeeding it.
I like that. I like that viewpoint, Angel,
Agree.
and I do really like that. Ashley, in addition to what a QMed is, what have you taken away for today?
Exactly what Angelle took the words out of my mouth. How insane it is to watch you both speak about your path and how they're so similar yet so different, and just how amazing it is. And also, I've learned that when I get home today, I'm going to scream at my children, tell them that they need to get their S together, and yeah, I like my mind is blown.
I'm sorry, there is something I want to add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also in kind of associated with that, just from a past perspective, how Cooper he is able to now work and pursue
Yeah.
a degree like at the same time while he's on the boat, whereas in the past that probably wasn't necessarily um a path that he could go
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm extremely fortunate to be born at the time I was born, because if I was born even 20, 30 years earlier, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. So I'm
2030, you mean like 5 years earlier? Like
Probably, yeah.
yeah,
it's,
Yeah.
I
I'd
was
Yeah,
gonna
say
yeah.
say,
When you start, I mean, when you started
yeah,
on
the
board, there
Starlink.
wasn't
Yeah, you're
yeah.
right.
there
Yeah.
No,
wasn't
I'd
an
say
internet.
oh,
But like when you left the boats, could you imagine that you'd be in the middle, like, not just in port, but when you'd be at sea, that you'd have full Wi-Fi?
No, I
awesome.
mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I'd say I'm a product of my time. I'm fortunate enough to be living in the age and era that we're living in, and I'm wanting to make the most of it. And because of me having the knowledge, knowing this is a possibility, because of my dad, because of people around, experience that I've gained, I am not only knowing that this is a possibility, I'm confident in my ability to pursue the goals that I want to pursue the paths that I want to pursue. And I'm extremely thankful and extremely grateful, extremely blessed to be able to live the life that I live and be taking the path that I'm taking.
That's great. And I really applaud you for your
I'm going to
attitude.
yell at my kids even more now because they are not fortunate the life they have.
Well, in addition to yelling at Ashley's kids, John, notice I said Ashley's kids there. What are your takeaways from today?
I think it's just great to, I've known my path for a very long time. Obviously, I've lived it, and I know it's atypical. It's not the most common and traditional means of getting to where you are, but I think it's helped me along the way, obviously. And one of the things I didn't mention was that, if you think about it, I graduated high school, then in January I started working on boats and made my way up. Well, when I was 31, I decided to go back to school, go to college, and get a degree. So I kind of like what Cooper's doing, but I was doing it in the office setting, and I did it at night. It wasn't online. So I had to go to night classes, and it took me 6 years to get a 4-year business degree, but I stayed with it. And I always like to tell the story that when I started college, I didn't have any kids and I wasn't married. And when I graduated college, my wife and 2 sons, they watched me walk across the stage. So it's like I wanted to be a role model to them, and I wanted to be able to go and do that. And I guess it took me 13, 14 years to become college ready because I was not at 18. But a sub story to that is, and this is not to brag about my GPA, but throughout my entire 6-year college stint, I had only 1 B. Everything else was an A. The 1 B was, in case you don't know, Cooper was born in November of 2004 with a congenital heart defect. He had open heart surgery at 9 days old, and I was in the middle of finals, about to go to finals for my biology class. I couldn't focus. I had my biology book next to his bedside. We had to baptize him. They didn't know if he was going to live or die. So I went to my professor. I'm like, I'm struggling. I don't think I can take this final. And she goes, based on your situation, I'll give you the option to I'll exempt you from your final, but wherever letter grade you're at now, you've got to take a 1 letter grade less. I said, okay, can we look to see what I'm carrying? She goes, oh, you're carrying an A. I'm like, I'll take that B. Give me the B. Because I couldn't focus. There's no way, So as you can tell, 20 years fast forward, he is alive and well. He doesn't look like your typical heart baby, that's for sure. He's got the scars that shows it, but he's not typical. So that also prompted me to always continue to put my best foot forward, because you just want to do so much for your children, and but you got to guide them, and you got to say no. And he's heard no a lot in his life from me. But I felt like it was meant to help later on in life. And you have to do the same thing in the Maritime. I mean, I want him to be a good worker. I want him to be, whether it's for me or anybody else, I want him to represent himself well in whatever job he's doing.
Well, and I didn't know that story, and that's a very cool story, John, as an addition to so much of your life history, which I always love to hear about and to use for our purposes here. But, I think what I also take away from that is also just knowing what's important.
Yeah.
And what I love about this industry, and Ashley talked about it in one of our previous episodes, it is, you think about this industry being full of a bunch of big, tough people, big, tough dudes, women that are going to shore that are, definitely tougher than me. But top to bottom, I find this industry to be very focused on family. And I really like that about this industry. And it's something it's one of the reasons I'm in this industry. And I think, that's I know that wasn't the main purpose of your story, but I also take that away from your story of your only B in college, is that you got to know what's important.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know Ashley, like I said, Ashley, you've talked about that in this industry.
Well,
and
I don't know, John, that we have a 12 and a almost 14-year-old, but when the 12-year-old was born, like 6-7 weeks, we had the AMSA fishing rodeo. And yes, I was on maternity leave, but I was like, nope, I'm going to be there. Well, she developed horrible colic. Turned out she had a lot of issues, nothing ever to compare, but she was just a pain all weekend. And I'm trying to do shirts and I'm trying to fish. And one of our board members is like, I got you. Wore her in a Bjorn screaming the whole time for me. Yeah. And I was just like, that's amazing. That's not
exactly.
not many places that you take your screaming baby and everyone's fine with it. or B, that someone's like, let me just take this baby, let alone someone but your board member.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'd only been in AMSA for like 9-10 months, really.
Right.
So it wasn't even a full year. So I always just think back about this industry, and I think back about that fishing rodeo.
Well, similar to that,
yeah.
from a family perspective, the company, the supply boat company I was working for at the time, go to the hospital. Go. Don't come to work. Go. I said, okay, I'll bring my laptop. Bring your laptop, but we're not going to focus on the well-being of because Cooper has a 22-month-old brother, older. So we had a 22-month-old and a newborn. The 22-month-old is hopping around family. We're at the hospital at Cooper, and my boss is coming visit me at the hospital and telling me, focus. You got the rest of your life to work. Focus right now. But that's an industry thing. That's what, and to this day, we still do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It is. And I love that about this industry. And I think, again, we have done a horrible job on telling our industry story. And, one of the reasons we wanted to form this was to correct that.
And to make fun of Aaron.
And to make fun of me. So hopefully we're accomplishing one of these goals. And I think it's probably the latter.
We're accomplishing multiple goals with this. Thank you.
Yeah. Education, making fun of Aaron, learning how to have a wonderful child.
What a hotshot
Which
driver
I'm
is.
clear what a hotshot driver is. Yeah.
Well, I've greatly enjoyed this episode.
Me too.
And, I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well, and getting to tell the story and be spokesmen for this industry, because you do a great job of it. Both John and Cooper, you do a great job of being spokespeople for our industry. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any last words, would love to hear any, final parting thoughts. Turn it over to you.
So I just, first of all, wanted to thank you for having me. And secondly, I just want to emphasize one more time how important it is for mariners and people in general to realize that they really have their life's in their control. And if you have a good path that you want to follow, and finding that good path that you want to follow is extremely important. So realize that you have your life in your control and take action accordingly.
Excellent. John, anything to add? And that was a great final thought, Cooper.
It is. No, I'm very proud to have my son follow into the industry, whether he remains in it following his college or not. It's been fun to watch him. It's been fun to hear, the captains that he's worked with tell me. The best line I had from a captain was, "Can you send me 7 more Coopers, please?" So it's great, and it's it hits home. But I really feel like everybody has this opportunity in this industry because it's so structured as far as sea time goes. It just takes hard work, good work ethic, an open mind, observe, take the blinders off, and never ever say that's not my job. And you can do well in this industry.
Right. That I love that last part too. That is a great lesson for anyone. Something that I didn't learn until later, but is totally something that everyone should know. So, well, I thank you guys, and I thank our listeners and our viewers for watching. Ashley and Angelle, I thank you guys for making time for this as well. To our viewers and our listeners, if there's any stories you want to hear or people you know of, please let us know. We're always open to people on the having some more guests on the podcast. And please like it, share it, download it, rate it, review it, all of those things. I don't know what half of those things are, but I'm told to say them.
Subscribe.
So
That's what the kids are doing these days.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we should probably just let Angelle and Cooper run the next one.
Yeah.
yes,
And me,
totally.
I'm young too, guys. I'm young too.
Oh, I forgot how young
sure
you were.
you are.
Absolutely.
Sure you are.
I'm younger than Aaron. That's all that counts.
Well, thank you guys. Please take care and be safe.
Have
And
a good
we'll
one.
see everyone on the next episode of Maritime in America.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That wraps up another episode of Maritime in America. We're proud to highlight the voices and stories that keep the American offshore industry strong. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, and remember, the course ahead is shaped by those who step up and steer. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Tune in every Friday for your offshore briefing, and don't miss our next full episode, dropping soon with the very special guest's mariner's perspective. Catch you next time.